Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder as I head out for a walk and deliver an episode to you while I stroll around. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good morning, listeners. It's a gloomy, if pleasant, morning here in suburban Chicago. The clouds are again that solid gray color across the sky. It's like having a blanket spread over one that might get me wet at any moment by start raining on me. It's been a good couple weeks of gaming. I've gotten a fair amount of interesting gaming in. Been thinking about games a lot and really having a nice time with it. Along those lines, I thought it's time for another shooting from the hip triple shot. For those of you new to the podcast, Shooting from the Hip is a segment in which I discuss games that I've just tried recently once or twice, and I give you my first reactions to them. It's a quick reaction, hence Shooting from the Hip. I often do these as a triple shot, meaning I talk about 3 games in one episode, because usually it's about 5 minutes or 5 to 7 minutes per game, and my walk is about 15 to 20 minutes, so 3 games fits nicely in the genre. There you are. So all 3 of these games actually were played in one session. I went to my buddy Paul's house and we tried out a number of short games. And so these are 3 of the 4 games we played. I'll talk about the other one on another episode. But this episode of Shooting from the Hip is also organized around simple, quick games that are easy to play for 2 players, if not directly for 2 players. So let's jump in. The first game I want to talk about is Rivet Heads. Rivet Heads is a new game. It's the second game produced by Daniel Newman and Tony Miller of New Mill Industries. That is their boutique publishing house that they've created to release designs that they feel are done but haven't gotten much traction with publishers as a way to get these designs out. And they're done sort of at cost or close to it, low print run, sort of just whoever buys them, those are the games you have. They also do a minimal. This is part of the design ethos of the company. They do minimal art. They use graphic design to convey theme, and generally the game is focused on mechanics. So they're very light theme-wise. They usually have a paragraph describing the theme of the game at the beginning, and then some of the iconography will fit the theme. But after that, it's all mechanisms. What I found, the last game of this from this company that I reviewed was Science and Seance Society, which was pretty satisfying, if a bit themeless, and I would say that's the same for this here. Ostensibly in this game, you are running a crew of high-tech hacker types, and this is in the future, and you're buying cybernetic upgrades to make them happy, and you're getting those by buying them or trading them, and really what it is about building an engine, and there's some interesting mechanisms. So the way the game works, it's 2 players. There's a row of cards in the middle that's a market. And, I am wrong. This is up to 4 players, now that I think about it. We played with the 2-player rules, but you can play up to 4. So there is a market in the middle, and everybody first puts their indicator, their token, on one of the market cards. So in a 2-player game, you pick 2 of the 4, or 2 of the 5 that are there. And then you resolve those in order from left to right. So when you're choosing, you're not only choosing which card you're going to get, you're also choosing what order you will pick cards in the next round. That's important. And the next round of cards is available to see while you're picking. So there's a really nice choice there. Part of what you're choosing is when you get to choose next time. So if there's a card you really, really need in the next round, you might choose a card that's a little less useful for you now because you know you really need the next one. And then you put the card into your tableau, and your tableau has these 3 slots called your assembly line. And this part's pretty interesting too. Every time, each turn, so you're going to draft a card, and then you run your assembly line. So the card you've just drafted runs, and then the next 2 cards run. So you run all 3, and then you slide the card that's last on the assembly line off into your discard pile, and you slide everything else down 1 notch. So you have this nice rhythm where each card you take is going to get to produce 3 times before you discard it. And this is your standard engine building stuff. Think of something like Century Spice Road, where you have a card that converts one gizmo into 2 slightly different gizmos, sort of like that. As the game goes on, many of the cards acquire a second feature, which is called the push. What the push is, it's sort of like endgame scoring. if you take a card on the push side, you do get a bonus, a one-time bonus, but it's not nearly as good as the production cards. But so when you take the card, the push side, you're going to rotate it around 90 degrees so it's upside down to tell that you've taken it on the push side. And then you get the one-time bonus, and then it does nothing in your display for the 3 turns that it's in there. When it slides off your production line, then you put it over on the left side of your tableau as an end game scoring condition thing. So what are you producing? When you have a tracking board that goes up to, I think, 30 points, and you have 6 different markers indicating your resource level of these 6 different kinds of resources. And your goal is, over the course of the game, to get your resources up to the level where you can recruit some or all of your team by having available the resources that they want. In addition, your push cards will boost the amount of the resources that you have up to some level of points, hopefully. And at the end of the game, you get points for having satisfied the crew team. You get points for boosting up the different resources, and you get the most points for having more of the resources than the other players. That actually ends up being the big swing in the game. There's way more points in winning those bonuses than anything else. So that's the game. The mechanism by which the cards move around is really interesting. And we definitely, when we got done, we're like, oh yeah, we got to play that again sometime soon. So definitely a win. I would say if you're trying to decide which New Mill Industries game to get, I like this one better than Science and Seance Society. But both are really interesting, tight little filler games. You have 20 minutes, here's a game we're going to play. Really interesting decisions for a little while. So that was Rivet Heads from Tony Miller and New Mill Industries. Next up we have Village Green by Pierre Sylvester, published by Osprey Games. I think it's Osprey. In Village Green, you are trying to make a very nice garden, which will be judged by the garden committee of the village. The idea is that you are collecting a tableau of 9 cards, along with potentially 6 additional cards along the top edge and left edge of that grid that score you points based on the row or column where they're at the end. So for instance, if you have your first column has a card at the top, it might reflect on characteristics of the card. So each card has a flower icon in the corner that is either red, blue, or yellow, and it has a shape. It's a circle, it's a triangle, or it's a pentagon. I mean, there's a particular kind of flower in there, but each flower was sort of bounded by a shape, and the shape is what I remembered. Then each card also has some icons on it, which indicate either like a gazebo, a lake, some trees, and there's 3 different kinds of trees, I think, or a lawn, which is kind of a blank neutral card. In addition, when you play a card, you have to play it next to a card that shares one of the traits of that upper icon corner. So if I play a yellow triangle card in my upper left, the card to the right and below the yellow triangle either have to be the lawn, the neutral blank, or they have to be a yellow card or a triangle card. So you've got this kind of challenge in filling out your green. And then there are these scoring cards that you get that go in the top and along side that give you points or sometimes take away points for the row and category that you have. The experience of playing this game is somewhere between the very light but satisfying experience of Point Salad, in which you have different categories you're trying to meet, but you could change the categories relatively easily, and it's sort of a race to get this done before you finish before the time runs out. And then the other game that this reminded me of is Calico. Now you all know, or if you've been listening a while, you know that I really like Calico. Calico has the same central conundrum this game does, which is that you are looking, as the game goes along, you are narrowing your choices and making very particular things that you need to come up. So in order to succeed in a particular goal, you need one particular kind of card. You need a yellow triangle in order to go into this spot or whatever. Or you have sometimes where, what you really want is a building there, but the 3 cards that you've put around it now make it so you can't put anything there. In that way, it's sort of like Sagrada as well. Sagrada is a dice placement game where you have a grid, and there are rules about what can be next to other dice in the grid. And as a result, then sometimes you end up not being able to place any dice in the grid. Village Green was really fun. That one is it only 2 players? No, I think you can play more. Yeah, you can play up to 4 or 5 with that game. We played only 2. Like I said, really interesting choices. The tableau is nice. I think the game might get a little long with 4 or 5 because there's no speed up mechanism and it's not simultaneous. Like you choose your card from the market when it's your turn to choose a card. So the game would go slower. It would take twice as long with 4 players. But it was still pretty satisfying and really fun. So that was Village Green from Pierre Sylvester and Osprey Games. A delight. I didn't even talk about the art. The art is very nice. It's pastoral. It has this sort of lawns and trees and gazebos and lakes. Our little man-made ponds. They're just lovely. It's a nice little game. It looks pretty. Good decisions to make. Yeah, really fun. So that's Village Green. I liked it quite a bit. It's the last game I'm going to talk about is Nanga Parbat. Nanga Parbat was designed by Steve Finn, published by Dr. Finn's Games. Nanga Parbat is about the 9th highest mountain in the world. It's a mountain in the Himalayas that is tended by Sherpas, the same clan of individuals that we know to serve as guides on Everest. On Nanga Parbat, you play as a family of Sherpas trying to, it says you're Sherpas. The theme is very light. It's really an abstract game, but the idea is that you are leading expeditions onto the mountain and taking hikers up to go camping. And meanwhile, you're also catching animals to serve as food and to help create coats and other textiles for your family. So the gameplay is relatively simple. The board is divided into 6 regions, and inside each region is a tiny mirror of those 6 regions. So think of a pyramid with a 1 on top and 4, 5, 6 on the bottom row. And then that's the regions. Region 1 is at the top of the board. And inside region 1, there's a tiny pyramid of 6 squares, numbered 1 through 6 again. And then on each of those 36 squares on the board, you put one of 5 different types of animals. So on your turn, there's an expedition leader token that is next to one of the 6 regions. On your turn, you take one animal out of the region that the expedition leader is in, and then you put one of your hikers. This game is definitely only 2 players. You have a hiker, your opponent has hikers. You put one of your hiker meeples in that space where you just took the animal. Then you move this part's really clever. Then you have to move the expedition leader to the location matching the number that you just took the animal from. So if you're in region 2, and you take an animal from spot 5 and then put your hiker there, then you move the leader person to area 5, and then your opponent is going to play in that area. Then the last thing you can do is turn in your animals or your hikers for sets. The way that works is you can turn in, like I said, there's 6 different kinds of animals. You can either turn in sets of the same animal or sets of different animals, or if you have sets of hikers where they're all adjacent to each other, you can turn in those hikers. When you turn in the hikers, you put little tents on instead, so the board is still occupied. When you turn in animals, those just go back to the box. And then you get points based on how many things were in the set you turned in. In addition, each of the animal types that you take has a special power that it can do. It allows you to rearrange the board in certain ways, or move the expedition leader, or some of them will get you points, and some of them are wild in terms of sets. So there's a variety of different things you can do with the animals when you turn them in, and you don't forfeit the animal when you use its power. And I think that part's pretty creative. You're not choosing between getting a set and using the power. You can do both. That's a very clever move to encourage people to use these powers. This game is really fun. I like the mix of choices and the mix between you're doing your thing for yourself and you're trying to manage what the other person's doing, but it's pretty flexible, so you don't feel like you're getting just destroyed by the other person if they're manipulating the board in certain ways. I think it could get kind of cutthroat if people really made an effort to use the powers to disrupt each other's sets. So far, I haven't played that way, but there's also an opportunity cost to failing, there's an opportunity cost to using your special powers to disrupt someone else's actions. That means you're not progressing yourself toward those actions unless you've been very thoughtful about it. If you say you have 2 workers or 2 hikers on one side, 2 hikers on the other, and your opponent has 1 hiker in between them, if you can play next to that opponent and then use one of the animals to switch the spots, then suddenly you have 6 adjacent hikers, and maybe you can get the bonus for that. All in all, it's a fun game. This one I played with my wife as well as with my buddy, and Everybody had a good time. The scores were all pretty close together. And, you know, I think this one will hang around a while. This is probably the most complex to set up, is this board with all these little meeples on it, and you're constantly switching meeples around. And so it's a bit more fiddly than the other games. But then again, Rivet Heads also has like a whole bunch of tokens you have to kind of put out. And in terms of complexity, complexity of setup, it's probably Nanga Parbat, Rivet Heads, and then the easiest to set up is Village Green. In terms of fun, I would put it in the other order. I would put Nanga Parbat first, then Village Green, and then Rivet Heads. Although, like I said, I really did enjoy Rivet Heads, and it's definitely going to stay in my collection. Whereas Science and Science Society, I haven't decided yet. I'm definitely going to play a couple times again, but it wouldn't surprise me if that one rotates out a little faster. Well, those are 3 short games, or 3 simple games that I've played recently. They've been a pleasure to play. It's fun to get. I like short games. They often provide a little snack, a sort of gaming snack, and having a game day of tapas where you play a bunch of short games can be a really fun experience. It's a nice way to try out different things, to sort of see what you like, and assess where they belong in your collection. Hopefully this has given you a sense of whether these games might be fun for you. If you get the opportunity to try them or buy them, this might give you a little more insight into whether they're right for you. What games have you been playing recently? Have you tried any direct for 2-player games or anything short? Please let me know over on Board Game Geek. You can go to Guild 3269 and join us there. I put a link to that forum in the show notes for this episode, which are over on rattleboxgames.com. You can reach me directly by sending me a geek mail to user wombat929 or by emailing me, brendan@rattleboxgames.com. I'll be happy to chat with you there. If you'd like to play an asynchronous online game with me, I'm on all 3 of the asynchronous platforms. You've got your Board Game Arena, Boitaju, and Yukata.de. In all 3 cases, I am Wombat929 in those locations, and I would enjoy playing a game with you. Drop me a line. Well, thanks for joining me on my day today. I hope that your next walk and your next play of short games is as pleasant as always. Take care. Bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.